I am Pierre Paradis from Silverton, Oregon. I work for Paradis Vineyards. First grapes were planted in 1990. Planted 10 acres of Pinot Gris, and at that time we had roughly 10 or 15% of all of the Pinot Gris in Oregon. The primary grape is Pinot Noir, generally small blocks, small lots, and high attention to detail in the vineyard. Really taking care of the vines cluster by cluster in some cases, and it's very high intensity out in the vineyard. There's a lot of things that we do by hand, and there's a lot of things that we're starting to do mechanically that have traditionally been done by hand, but we're getting better and better machines as the years go by, and introducing them into our programs, and being able to cut some costs on that. It rains enough throughout the summer that a lot of places do not have irrigation, contrary to other growing regions where you can use water to control your vigor. In Oregon, in a lot of ways, you have no control over the vigor, so you end up having to control it in other ways by hedging. I mean, sometimes we'll hedge 4 times a year in particularly vigorous sites. Where in other areas, I've heard that you might not hedge at all. You just ratchet down your water to the point that your canopy just stops growing, and you give it just enough water to keep the plants going and ripen your fruit. So another way that you can control vigor, and that we've done on our farm, is by increasing bud number in particularly vigorous blocks. We will do as much as double the buds. So when we prune, we'll do Scott Henry systems, and you put on double the buds, which then correlates into double the clusters, roughly. And so that is transferring some of the vigor that you would normally cut off in hedging, transferring that energy into more fruit, and can increase your yields. If you do the double canopy, the Scott Henry style stuff, you run the risk of putting on too much fruit, and if you have too much fruit late in the season and and it happens to be a cool year, then there's a decent chance that you won't ripen it in the Willamette Valley. So we'll, sometimes put on 6 ton, and if it's a warm year like 2014 or 15, then that's not a problem at all. But then if it's a cool year like 11 or 13, then it is a problem, because you can never get it up to the sugar levels that you need to harvest. So when my parents started growing, there really was not any mechanization whatsoever, and one of the first things that he did was mounted a lawnmower on his loader tractor, and he was revolutionary because he was cutting the tops of his vineyard while he was cutting the grass behind him. And I then had an uncle drove in and saw what he was doing and said, "You're crazy, I'm gonna build you a better machine than that." And built him one of the first sickle type hedgers in our area. It's basically just a swather teeth inverted on its side. We do the early season leaf remover, and then later on we do it with the plucker types. Then you have the leaves off most of the year. From even pre-bloom, we're able to get in and do it, and so we don't have any sunburn problems. And then the advantage of leaf removal then is many different things. I mean, you get more in the Willamette Valley. We have huge issues with botrytis and powdery mildew, so when you can get your leaves off, you get more airflow. The dew in the morning dries out faster, the rains dry out faster, and possibly most important, you are able to get your chemicals where they need to be, because you have direct access to the clusters. So I decided to go to college because I knew what we were doing in the vineyard, but I didn't understand why we were doing what we were doing. And I knew how to do it, but not why. And so I wanted to go down to Oregon State to learn why I was being told to prune a certain way, why why we did leaf removal, why do we cultivate every other row, why do we do these things. And so that was my reasoning on why I wanted to go to school and get an education. Working in a vineyard, one of the things I enjoy most is seeing the results of an experiment that we're trying. I really enjoy thinking about what are my problems and how can I fix them.